Chapter 942, Deity's Curse. With Klein's spirituality making contact, the points of light suddenly expanded into a scene before his eyes. With his shadow cloak up, Danitz was praying with his head bowed in the corner of the square, chanting the fool's honorific name with ancient Hermes. Thanks to this, Klein could see an expanded area around him, and he began searching for Nsi Zangwill. Through the gray fog, everything he saw was clearly different from what he had previously seen. In the middle of the square, a pitch-black corpse-embedded cathedral had appeared at some point in time. It was dark inside, but there wasn't any signs of activity inside. Using this opportunity, Klein replied Danitz's prayer, "Leave the area. Find a hidden spot to hide in." As he spoke slowly, dressed in the papal tiara and dark robes, Klein raised his left hand and made the blue gems at the tip of the bone scepter light up. Sharp, jarring sounds immediately resounded in Revival Square in the real world as a sudden gale swept the area. It made the people who were spending their leisure time there or the pedestrians to leave quickly to head for shelter from the wind. Even Anderson, who had a frozen expression, recovered his usual insouciant attitude. Holding his abdomen, he quickly rushed out of the dangerous area. In a few seconds, Revival Square became extremely silent. Even the pedestrians who walked slowly without running had experienced the feeling of flying with the nudging of the wind. The empty area entered a brief silence. Then, a flame appeared from the corpse cathedral's window. It grew in size and became increasingly blinding. Silently, the colored glass windows shattered as blinding white light that bordered on blue shot out like a meteor. This flaming light instantly crumbled, materializing into Nsi Zangwill, who wore a black clergyman's robe and had one dark blue eye and one eye covered with blood vessels. The moment this night watcher appeared, he couldn't help but open his mouth and scoff at the classic quill in his hand. "If a fool like you didn't listen to my suggestion, how could something like this happen? I'm not even sure what you're afraid of. If you had allowed me to pray to the Lord, allowing me to secretly return to the Rose Redemption and join forces with the Serpent, our preparations would allow us to set up a trap. Today, we will be the ones hunting Adam and not the other way round." The seemingly dark and damaged quill immediately flew up and wrote on an empty spot of Nsi Zangwill's clothes. Due to a rage stemming from embarrassment, Sauron Einhorn Medici pushed the blame of this development to the quill of Ulzuhad, but in fact, it was he who was stopping himself from praying to the true creator. Be it Sauron or Einhorn, neither one of them trusted this evil god. Today's development made this evil spirit's psychological dissociation to worsen. This is extremely reasonable. This is the diagnosis by the best, most professional psychiatrist. Nsi Zangwill immediately frowned as he raised his left hand and pressed it to his head. His dark blue eye rapidly recovered its luster as the classically sculpted face turned extremely stern. At this moment, having escaped the corpse cathedral, he was no longer facing the square. Instead, it was flights of ancient stone stairs. They were leading to the peak of a towering mountain. Erected, there was a huge cross with countless angels spiraling around it. At this moment, an exaggerated bolt of silver lightning tore through the overcast sky, smiting right down at Nsi Zangwill. The sealed and strange space produced cracks. The fountain and its splashes appeared in his dark blue eye. Nsi Zangwill's figure immediately vanished, leaving behind a blurry, transparent spirit. The latter was struck by lightning and was instantly obliterated. This night watcher didn't have the luxury of time to consider what other lurking dangers there were. He took this opportunity to transform into a flame as he penetrated a crack and rushed out. To him, no matter what lay ahead of him, nothing was more terrifying and difficult to deal with than the son of the Creator, King of Angels Adam. Upon seeing the flame rise up from the square, allowing Nsi Zangwill to escape the restraints of the illusory world and returning to his appearance with dark blonde hair and pale hands, Klein raised his head slightly and subconsciously sat straight. Countless scenes flashed across his mind. Him having his heart penetrated, the pair of bright leather boots just before his previous death, Dunn Smith smiling at him with a wink of his left eye, and the Blackthorn Security Company, which had been reduced to ruins. The corners of Klein's mouth quickly curled upwards as he revealed a comical smile. He then deeply muttered using ancient Hermes, misfortune. The silver-gray charm on his right palm suddenly burst into a gloomy black light. This was a charm of the misfortune domain Klein made using Snake of Mercury, will Ossipton's blood and precious metals, by praying to the Evernight goddess. This was a present he had prepared for Nsi Zangwill. This was an arrow of vengeance. This was a deity's curse. Klein immediately stood up, stretched his shoulders, and threw out his right arm, fusing the gloomy black light with the little powers he could stir from above the gray fog as he threw them at Nsi Zangwill. Just as Nsi Zangwill returned to Revival Square, he saw a dark black beam appear out of nowhere. It blanketed the entire sky, making him find himself in an extremely dark environment. Such a change happened in a flash before everything was restored to normal in an instant. Nothing seemed amiss, but as a night watcher who could give others a certain level of bad luck, Nsi Zangwill acutely smelled the aura of danger. Without any hesitation, he reached out his left palm in a bid to use the evil spirit within him and his powers as a gatekeeper to enter the spirit world and flee. However, none of the surrounding bright flowers, pure white fountain, and dark black tiles had their colors saturate, much less become stacked. Nsi Zangwill's spirit world traversal had become ineffective. The glint in his eyes froze as he seemed to understand the reason. It was because the evil spirit in him was having an internal struggle. Thus, they wouldn't lend him their power. See, everything would be fine if you had listened to me. Bullshit, I'd rather die than believe in the true creator. What's the point saying all of this? Didn't you still end up the same as us, being made into a potion by Alice de Tudor? So none of you are nervous at all? Didn't you notice that the curse clearly came with a deity's aura? That power was fundamentally very powerful. Our present condition doesn't allow us to avoid it at all. Haha, continue arguing. Go on, I'll wait to die with all of you. The veins on Nsi Zangwill's forehead throbbed when he heard that. He was furious that Sauron Einhorn Medici would suddenly engage in an internal strife at such a critical moment. They didn't seem to notice the danger they were in at all. As a former archbishop, as a beyonder who had watched over the Church of Evernight's holy artifacts, Nsi Zangwill didn't let his judgment become clouded because of his rage. He instinctively believed that the gloomy black beam had something to do with the Evernight goddess's authority over misfortune. He believed that Sauron Einhorn Medici's sudden fallout was clearly a result of this influence. Otherwise, it was impossible for the Red Angel evil spirit to break into a quarrel without concerning themselves with the situation they were in simply because of the quill of Ulzuhad's writing. He immediately turned around, quickly running towards another exit of Revival Square in an attempt to communicate with other spirits. He wished to borrow their powers to escape. However, there wasn't a single spirit around. At this moment, a figure stood in a hidden corner of the open square. He was a mixed-blood with parents coming from Lone and Balem. He had a fleshy face and baggy clothes. On his waist hung a rapier. It was Admiral Hel Ledwell. This was a marionette who usually didn't have any thoughts. After throwing out the deity's curse charm, Klein followed his plan, returned to the real world, and made use of the two marionettes. As he made Enzo find a corner, he took out the items he prepared, set up a bestowment ritual, and controlled Admiral Hel to walk to a secluded spot to face Nsi Zangwill. This Admiral Hel, who looked nothing like his original self, raised his right hand, allowing his arm and fingers to rapidly turn incorporeal as they extended towards the target. This was a power he used by borrowing the underworld creature within him to extract the spirit bodies of others remotely. Ludwell's palm quickly turned pale white, and above Nsi Zangwill, a figure floated up uncontrollably. However, Nsi Zangwill was once a gatekeeper. An illusory bronze door filled with mystery immediately took form in his eyes as it quickly pulled back his escaping spirit body. With his level and strength, this was unlikely to succeed so successfully, but for some reason, he repeatedly made mistakes and nearly allowed Admiral Hel to succeed. For a brief moment, all he could manage to do was a seesaw-like struggle. At this moment, two figures rapidly appeared beside Ludwell. One of them was the black-haired, green-eyed Leonard with a transparent glove in hand, and the other was Davy Simone, who had blue eyeshadow and blush. They had arrived at the perfect moment, because the bad luck of an enemy often implied that one was lucky enough. The first thing Dolly saw was the figure she could never forget. Pangs of fury burned in her eyes instantly. She didn't rashly attack as she made some observations. She came behind Ludwell and spread her arms. A bronze door filled with countless strange patterns immediately descended and creaked open a gap. This was a door that led to the underworld. It was a door filled with allure to all undead creatures. An indescribable and terrifying suction force came out of it as the figure above Nsi Zangwill's body completely separated from him. It was a translucent man wearing blood-stained black armor. He was young and handsome with red hair. His face had terrifying signs of decay, and at his glabella was a flag-like mark. This young man wasn't too surprised about being separated from Nsi Zangwill. Instead, he sneered. "We sure are unlucky today. We have already died together once, so is there a need to do so another time? Especially when we're being controlled by such a weakling." A bloody gap appeared on his upper left cheek as it opened and closed. "All right, let's clear out the surrounding trash." Before the sentence was finished, the man in blood-stained black armor reached out his palm and drew out an illusory sword with dark red rust stains from his body. A terrifying suppressive force easily allowed the evil spirit to free itself from Ludwell's and Dolly Simone's extraction. It swooped down in an attempt to return to Nsi Zangwill's body. At this moment, a hoarse voice sounding as though it held sandcloth in it. Admiral Hel Ludwell had chanted in ancient Hermes, "Fate,